From this moment, life has begun. From this moment, you are the one. Right beside you is where I belong. From this moment on.
I didn't really date growing up. I didn't really date anybody. I was just focused on my activities and school and showing cattle.
I wasn't really into dating anyone. I was just working and driving and on the road a lot, building houses.
My Wisconsin grandmother, Betty, when I was living with her, she'd always ask me, so do you have a boyfriend now? Or are you gonna get a boyfriend? Or, she'd always pick on me about it. And I was like, no, Betty, I got farming to do and I got hay. And she always told me, she said, the person that you're gonna marry, you don't know yet. And he's gonna come out of the blue and he's gonna come when you least expect it. And she was right.
One night, I was coming out of Maysville and there's this truck that was right on my tailgate of my truck. I thought, who is right on my ass, riding through all the way to Tollsboro? So I was doing a little evening job up the road from me in Tollsboro, and I stopped in at the gas station.
Betty passed away on November the 4th of 2020, and July the 15th of 2021, I was at the Tollsboro gas station.
That truck pulled up, that Alabama truck pulled up, and that girl came out. She had a little puppy.
And I just pulled up. We just always loafed at the Tollsboro gas station, and I pulled up and I had Gypsy, my dog, in my hand. She was really little. She was a puppy at the time, and I jumped out of the truck and I went and I handed Gypsy off to Grant, and there was this guy standing sitting beside of him by the ice machine, and our eyes kind of met, and I'm thinking, who is that? So I just handed Gypsy to Grant and I went in the gas station to get something, and I guess whenever I went in the gas station, Toby was like, Grant, who's that? Who's that?
And when she walked through the door, one of the old men called her by her name and said something, and I thought to myself, it's like, how does he know a girl from Alabama? So she came back out and sat down in front of us and started talking and stuff, and after she got up and left, and I was like, to the old man, I was like, do you know her? He was like, yeah, she lives right here. I'm like, why is she driving an Alabama truck? He was like, oh, that's a rental. It's like, okay.
Well, the next night, I was sitting there loafing, because that's what we did. It was, the middle of summer, so 8, 9 o'clock when it'd get dark, we'd all go loaf at the gas station. And I noticed him leave the night before in his Tahoe. So I noticed his Tahoe doing this U-E kind of circle deal in the parking lot, and I'm like, kind of caught my eye. Well, he came to the gas station and he sat right down in front of me on a milk crate. So I was like, who is this guy? He had his Kitchen and Bathmaster shirt on, a lime green one, and I was taking up donations for the Fleming County Fair at the time, and it said KBM on a shirt, and I just was like, so that company on your shirt, do you own that? And he was like, yeah, I own that. And I just laughed, and I told him about, the fair, and he was like, oh, okay. And we just started talking from there, and we talked a lot of that night, just loafing at the gas station, and a bunch of us were talking about the Tollsboro Fair, and the horse show was the next 2 nights.
If I remember right, we went back out. I went back out. I was at the same little chop site, so I wasn't really going to stop at the gas station, but I was like, I'm going to pull in and do kind of a circle just to see if she's there. And I did, and she was. So I was like, oh hell, I'm gonna go over and park and come out and talk. So I did, and one thing just kind of led to another, and we got to talking, and I asked her about, it was right in the time of the fair going on in Tollsboro, and I asked her about the horse show.
And I kind of asked him, I was like, Toby, are you gonna go to the horse show? And he's like, oh, I thought about it. And come to find out, he did not know about the horse show. But, he came, and I didn't have lawn chairs. My lawn chairs were broke. So I was like, I gotta find a lawn chair to go to the horse show. And he's like, I got a lawn chair.
She said something about if anybody has a chair or something to go, and I'm like, I got chairs. So I brought chairs out there. Me and her went to the horse show. We watched the horse show.
So he brought me a lawn chair, and he kind of sat like over from me, and I was like, well, you can move over here, because there was kind of a car blocking the show ring, and his face kind of lit up, and he moved over really close to me, and we sat there at the horse show, and that's where we hit it off, definitely.
Yeah, one thing led to another, and we kind of went on our little date to a rodeo that following Saturday.
And then our real first date was the next Saturday night. We went to a rodeo, a benefit rodeo in Owington, Kentucky. And we ate at Longhorn Steakhouse, and he paid for dinner. After we went to the rodeo that night, I just wanted to talk to him. I knew him a little bit, you know, as we had spent the week at the fair and seen each other, but I didn't really know him. You know, I didn't know his story. And so we went to the Mount Carmel Cemetery of all places, because it's on a hill, so you know, you can see out everywhere. And he drove the little gray cart, which is important. I'll get back to that in a minute. But we sat there, and it was like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And we sat there and we talked, and I knew that it had been a long time. But all of a sudden, we're sitting there and we're talking, and he like looks up at the sky, and he's like, is that the Northern Lights? And I'm thinking, what? So I looked, and he said, oh my gosh, that's daybreak. And I was like, oh my gosh, it is. So we looked at our phones, and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. So we literally talked all night, like 8 hours.
We sat up after the rodeo. We sat at the, and this is kind of a crazy part, we sat at the cemetery. And she wanted me to go show me, this was in the wee hours of Sunday morning now. This was getting daylight.
And I said, oh my gosh, I gotta show you something. So we loaded up in my truck, and we went to Thomas Lane in Tollsboro, and I said, this is the prettiest place in the world to watch the sun come up. And that was really special. So like, we took the whole day, that whole next day, it was a Sunday, and I showed him where my cousin lived and where my uncle lived, and he showed me Bucklick, where he first came to Kentucky, and he drove me on the roads where he had first came to Kentucky and what he saw and who he met, and past Charlie Hord's house. And it was like, I felt like after that moment I knew him.
So she wanted me to go show me a farm she always liked, and worked on some. And I had my little silver car at the time. Well, we ended up driving around most of that Sunday. We get back to the cemetery to pick up my car later on that night, and it was gone. The little car was gone.
But the gray car, we ended up going back that night. So we spent the whole day, you know, learning all these roads and telling all these stories and showing each other everything. And we went back to get the gray car, and the gray car was gone. So we were like, who stole this gray car? And he said, oh, it's okay. I really like that gray car, but you know, it's okay if it's gone. So he got up the next morning, I guess, and he called the tow truck service, and the tow truck ended up towing it because it was there for so long that day.
And that whole week, she would message me off and on throughout the day. She invited me to come ride in the tractor to cut hay, and I did, something I've like never done before. Never even would have thought about ever riding a tractor going cutting hay, but I did. I went and worked all the way up in Ohio and drove all the way down, and after work and went all the way to Moorhead to ride with a girl and cutting hay. And I was like, I don't believe myself.
And flash forward, we started dating, and we moved pretty fast. I just kind of knew that he was the one. I knew that he was what I was looking for. And I've learned everything about hunting and about racing, because that's what Toby loves to do. And he has had many of hours on a John Deere tractor cutting hay with me. And we just really support each other in what's going on, and we make a great team.
Part of my life, for being single for 10 years plus, I just never imagined that I would ever date anybody. And the funny thing is when I spent 2 years in Florida, way back in 2014 to 15, and part of 16. And I always told my very dear friend down there, which I call her my stepmom, and her name's Angela. I always told her, I'm not gonna look for anybody. I said, sooner or later, somewhere along the line, God's gonna put somebody in my life, and I'm gonna feel it, I'm gonna know it. And that is kind of way it was her when she pulled into the gas station.
And so I think back to when Betty told me, he's gonna come out of the blue and he's gonna be exactly who you wanted. Like, she was right. She was right. And I always promised her, she got dementia at the end, and I always promised her, she had 5 kids and none of them ever named a kid after her. So when Zelly was born, I'd promised Betty that I would name my daughter Elizabeth Jane. Well, we already had Elizabeth, so we agreed upon Zelda Elizabeth. And so Betty has been a big part of our relationship, even though Toby never got to meet her.
When we had our little daughter, I kind of had plans on proposing before she was born, because I had made up my mind that I want her for my wife, my soulmate, and want to be with her for the rest of as long as I live. So it just fit perfect that I had to go out and get something she wanted something to eat shortly after she was born, and I was like, oh sure, I will. So I went out and it just worked out great for me to bring the ring and everything in, because all that stuff was still in the car.
The way he proposed was, I had just had Zelly, and he was starving because I wasn't allowed to eat that day because I had a planned C-section, and he was starving. He was trying to be a trooper and hold it out for me, to not eat in front of me, but he was like, babe, I've got to go get something. So after I had her and stuff, he went to McDonald's, and I asked him, he was like, do you want anything? And I'm like, just a half-cut tea. So he brings in the half-cut tea, and he hands it to me, and I'm holding Zelly, and I took the tea, and I was like, is this half-cut? And he's like, yeah, it's half-cut. And I kind of looked, I'm sipping my tea, and the nurses are all standing over here, and one of them had a phone in her hand, and I'm just kind of like, huh, that's weird,
And the nurses in there were phenomenal. I had them video the whole thing, so that was pretty epic, and I really liked it. That was a very, very precious moment with the little newborn and proposing to her.
And so he says, Jesse Lee, and I look, and he's there with a ring. And it completely surprised me. Like, I was not expecting that at all. And he was like, will you be the wife to my children, and will you marry me? And I said yes. And that, we had dated for 2.5 years, had Kansas, had Zelly, and so it was a long time coming, but it was perfect, like the perfect moment.
as far as the ring, she always liked horses. So that's kind of where the horse thing come in. That's why I did the ring that I did, was because of her passion for horses and stuff. So, and I think she was pretty happy with the ring as well.
So the ring, I've got a couple rings that are sentimental to me, and they all have to do with horseshoes and horses. That was my thing. So he got me a horseshoe ring, and then we ended up adding the band around it as our wedding band for the horseshoe. So it all kind of, you know, tied my life together of horseshoe diamond rings, and it was really special.
All I have to say is I can't wait to marry her and make her my wife, and hopefully we can work everything out as we go through our marriage, and always work on making each other stronger. And I wouldn't trade anything in the world for it. It makes my life complete. As far as anything else, I'm just excited to make memories with her and my new family and live my life the best I can.
Toby, I guess that what I want to say is I can't wait to be your wife and can't wait to grow together and see where life takes us. And we've been through a lot, and we've built a lot, a family, a home, a happy life, and it doesn't matter where we live, or if we live with plywood floors, sleeping on twin beds like we did when we moved into the new house, or cooking out of air fryers, and whatever life throws at us, I know that we can make it and that we've got a strong bond, and as long as you're there, it's gonna be home. And I can't wait to spend this life with you. Happy wedding day.